on NFL Primetime. How cold was it in Week 15? Just ask Raymond Berry, Jerry Burns, Anthony Munoz, the referees, or the fans. But cold weather also means playoff stretch runs.
I wanted to make my next devlog a little bit more ad-libbed. I did create a devlog script, but I just feel like I didn't really capture what I wanted to say. So I'm just going to kind of improvise and try to lay out what's been going on. To make a long story short, I've taken about 3 years or so to make about a 1-year game, considering the requirements of the project. Part of that is because there was honestly just a lot of wasted time. I started out in a completely different engine. Several months in, probably like almost a year in, I realized that the engine was actually a limitation because of how obscure it was. So I switched engines, and that took several months. A built-in problem with doing that was that I ported a lot of the logic from the previous engine, which can still work, but the engine that I switched to is Godot, and there's a lot of ways to do what I was doing that are a lot easier that I just completely ignored and was kind of reinventing the wheel. And so it took time to transition to the new engine, and then it took time to translate the logic. Several months later, I started to realize that the way I had ported everything really wasn't the best way. And so slowly I started kind of rebuilding things and doing things that are better inside the new game engine. Part of the reason why it's taken probably longer than it should have is just technical stuff. So that was a major hurdle. There's also other things just programmatically that I didn't really grasp. And so I've really had to come to the realization that honestly for the past I'd say maybe 2 years of the past 3 years have just been me learning in the shape of my project. And what I mean by that is just that I've been programming things that could go into my game, but were just kind of rough around the edges and weren't really doing what I needed them to do in the long run. To sum that all up, I think that only in the past year or so have I really actually been laying down concrete pieces of the game and actually moving forward. There's been a lot of things that I've programmed or I've spent time on that I've just gotten rid of over time or just have had to discard. There's just a lot of things like that which have piled up and added to the time that I've been doing this. And before I move on to the more game design aspect, I do want to point out that 2 months ago, I was feeling confident that I could submit a build to Steam. I felt like the game was playable with how I had changed the scope, and I had done a little bit of closed testing with someone that I trusted, and the feedback that I got, it wasn't totally a surprise, but the way it was worded and the things that they were saying were really eye-opening, and it just kind of made me realize what the game had slipped into, which is not at all what I had really wanted it to be. And so with that, I'll move on to the more game design aspect of what's been going on. So if you take a look at my earlier devlogs, I say that my goal was to make something a little bit different. I didn't want to just make a worse version of an existing thing. I think that's exactly what I ended up making up until that point when I had done the closed testing. And I think the reason why I ended up making kind of just a bad version of an existing thing was that I didn't really know what a different type of game would look like. And so just subconsciously, I just fell back on genre convention. You just put in the things that exist in other games, not because it makes a cohesive game design, but because that's just maybe what some people expect, or because that's all you can see, that's all you can think of. That led me down a path of really trying to decide what this game was. What is this game supposed to be? I didn't want it to be just like Madden or any other mainstream game minus the fuel gameplay, because we all know what that is. Those exist, and I'm personally not really that interested in making just that. I know part of that stuff is unavoidable because it's so integral to the sport of football, but I think there's a lot of things that can be done differently. And so I had to think about, what is it that I'm trying to make? What is the design of the game supposed to be? I began to latch on the idea of certainty. Games like Madden and 2K and Game Day and all the mainstream competing football games that we used to have, they all give you certainty. You look at your roster and you see, okay, this guy is a 79. There's no disputing that. That is just what it is. There's no fog of war, so to speak. There's no wondering, well, is this guy really better than this guy? Because you have a list of objective properties. And so there's no way to discover or try to figure out who players are and where they fit on the team. And so I really began to kind of converge on that idea. Like, well, what if we removed certainty? And so I looked at games that removed certainty from the user, that were still kind of heavy on information given to the user. And one of those games, really the only game, was a game that came out, I think, in 2013, and it was pretty big for the indie scene, and it was called Papers, Please. And for those that don't know, Papers, Please, in a nutshell, is just a game where you kind of do mundane tasks. You play as you work inside of a guard shack, and you have to either admit people into your country, or you decline to admit them. And the way you do that is by looking at the rules of the day. You kind of sort through their passports and look at their information. You kind of get a picture of who they are, and then you have to make a decision. And I really liked that concept, where the game doesn't necessarily tell you what to do, like Madden does, like 2K does, like Game Breaker did, like Game Day did. Those games tell you, this guy is 79, this guy is an 85, this guy is a 99. There's no questions to ask. One guy is objectively better than the other or worse than the other, and that's it. There's no wondering, there's no sorting through data, there's no looking at different sources of information, there's none of that. And there's good reasons to have that in a type of football game, but I didn't want to do that. I think a game that took that away from the user and instead made you rely on the strength of your coaches, the reliability of surrounding information. A game that makes you do that is actually more realistic. When we look at a player, we don't get an objective number of who they are. We have to look at their statistics. What kind of picture does that paint for us? How many touchdown passes did they throw? How many tackles did they get? Does it look like they're performing at a high enough level that's consistent? Is it because there is truly something unique and better about the quality of this guy's play? Or is it just overperformance or underperformance? Let's take a look at his history. How has he affected teams? Let's look at his history. Let's take a look at what the team's record was in this year and this year and this year. Let's look at what the scouting report says. Papers, Please does that in a different way. but I had to kind of translate what you would be doing in a Papers, Please style game for football. And so I think one of the obvious choices was statistics, history, player accolades, scouting reports. These are all the types of things that you look at to try to get an idea of who the player is. But there's no objective information. There's just information that's maybe more reliable or maybe not. And you don't really know. You just have to trust and believe that these characters are giving you reliable information. And so that's kind of where I've pivoted. And so I've had to take I've taken a lot of stuff out, and I think the game is much, much better for it. It's more focused. There's less chores dragging the game loop down. There's no obvious decisions to make. That's kind of what I wanted to avoid. Is I don't want you to do click work, and click work is just obvious choices. Like, of course you put the 75 guy above the 60 guy. Of course you put the 85 guy above the 70 guy. Those are not strategic decisions. And so I've completely redone the structure of coaches, structure of players. I've taken a lot of stuff away, as I said, and I've made it an interpretive game. The way you get feedback is not the game telling you, yes, this guy is objectively better than this guy, or this coach is better than this coach. You kind of have to decide, you have to trust and believe certain characters. You can't just be told and given a magic list of truth. You have to discern, you have to interpret, you have to pay attention to feedback. Does it look like the team's going in the right direction? That's really what I've been doing, trying to scope everything around that concept. Now, it's still going to feel a lot like playing a Madden or a 2K or any type of those games, but the way you make decisions is completely different. So I've had to ask myself, what is it that I really care about in this game? And it's not doing click work. It's not putting the 99 guy at the top of the list. It's honestly not even play calling, although I think I would still have fun with that in this type of game. What gets me excited is not knowing what to do. In sports games, everything feels automatic. You're presented with tons of numbers. Occasionally, you make a strategic decision. But most of the time, it's just telling you what to do. And it's up to you to make optimal choices. And that's what I wanted to avoid. I wanted to avoid a spreadsheet optimizer. I wanted to avoid a point farming game. Not that those types of games can't ever be fun, it's just not what I was interested in making. And on top of that, what I had made that was resembling that was not even a good version of that. It was just bad. So the loss of certainty is very interesting to me. And the idea of narrative. And that's where I wanted to really, really try to make the broadcasts as best as I can make them in the shortest amount of time. I have to find ways to make the broadcast seem like it knows what's going on in the game world. It has to feel alive. It can't be the same every week. It has to take the raw information of the game that's already simulated and present it to the user in such a way that it's engaging and it seems like there's an actual game world happening under the hood. I wish that I could have spent 3 years making this design. I've honestly only spent maybe the past couple months on this design. Now there's a lot of kind of more mundane logic that I've ported over. A lot of this has been done in just the past couple months. I hate to say it, but it seems like I've kind of wasted. Maybe I shouldn't say wasted, but my efficiency in actually laying down complete parts of the game has been pretty low up until recently. And so that's why I say that I've taken 3 years to make a 1-year game. I'm wrapping up the main season loop, Like I said, it all works. The pro draft just needs a little bit of tweaking. But the past couple days, I've run several seasons through and no apparent issues, aside from maybe a couple UI bugs here and there that I fixed. And then I'm going to spend the next several weeks getting the broadcasts up to a level that I think is interesting and engaging. Right now they do work. It's just that they're highly repetitive, very formulaic. There's no real variance. There's no commenting on emergent stories and all that kind of stuff. Hopefully I can get it into a much more interesting state in a few weeks, and then we can open up into like a public testing or early access, or maybe even a 1.0. I'm not sure. But I really want to wrap this version of this game idea. I want to wrap it up. There's other games I'd like to make, but there's also other deeper versions of this game concept that I'd like to get to as well. But I think the way I've scoped this recently is going to be, I think it's going to be a good MVP that's going to do what I designed it to do and actually, be of some type of value. All throughout this experience, I've kind of just been fueled by fuzzy memories of TV in 1998, but I've had to really try to grasp something more tangible, do more of a focus on an actual playable game, an actual game design, and I think I've found that finally. So I'm excited to see where it goes from here.